Hello, and welcome to the DMZ America Podcast for Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. Coming to you from the left, I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
So the big news of the day is also happens to be it's a Middle East story, it's a war story, it's an espionage story, it's a tech story, and it is downright confounding. And to really make it bizarre, it's a retro tech story. My son is very interested in retro technology, obsolete technologies like manual typewriters and magnetic cartridges, 8-track tapes, all that kind of stuff, wax cylinders. And this story really reminds me of that. So today's Wednesday. Yesterday on Tuesday, explosions broke out all over Lebanon, injuring at least 3,000 people and killing at least 12, including at least 3 children so far. It appears likely that these Israeli intelligence agency, the Mossad, which is the CIA of Israel, which is very famous for some pretty dastardly actions, basically intercepted a shipment of pagers, old-fashioned beepers, as they call them in the Midwest, and put them and basically loaded them up with PETN explosives, and then sent them a signal simultaneously before after they were delivered to their respective Hezbollah clients. And so basically wherever these Hezbollah guys all over Lebanon, particularly in southern Beirut, but also in southern Lebanon, were walking around, hanging out, with their kids or walking down the street or in the store or whatever. When these things all went out, there's one story account that says that a message came through right before the explosion that said, "Fuck you."
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
I was wondering what the message was.
And, subtle. So today, while there were funerals being held, and by the way, the Iranian the Iranian ambassador to Lebanon, the mission head, he apparently was killed in the first attack because he was near someone with Hezbollah. And then today there was a second round of attacks, also presumably the responsibility of Israel, where they targeted walkie-talkies. Speaking of retro technology that Hezbollah uses, I guess, in the battlefield and maybe elsewhere, again, causing hundreds of explosions. All the hospitals in Lebanon are completely overwhelmed. And now the UN has been called into an emergency meeting of the Security Council by Muslim countries, including Algeria, in order to discuss the situation. And depending on how you look at it, it is either like one of the most amazing acts of sabotage and mass destruction that we've seen in covert warfare ever, or also an audacious act of international terrorism that was indiscriminate, violates international law 6 ways till Sunday, and could really cost Israel some points in the public opinion sweepstakes. What do you think about all this?
Well, it could be both. I mean, that's the other thing, is that I think in terms of full disclosure, I've been a pro-Israel guy, and
look, I'm sorry, lunch is here.
For those of you not watching this, there's Clovis the cat. I'll take a hind quarter, please. And
the tail. I know you have dibs on the tail.
Yeah, well, that's always the best part. Jesus Christ. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, beepers blowing up. It can be both. I mean, it can, and I have to believe Israel did this with the thought, you guys are going to terrorize us. Okay, finally, fuck you. We're going to terrorize you. Here's the problem with that, Ted, is that, America, Israel, we strongly condemn acts of terrorism. We're against them. They're horrible and heinous. They take many innocent victims along with them. That's exactly what this was. And quite frankly, I mean, low tech, let me do a quick historical thing. Low tech, a friend of mine was in Vietnam. Well, he wasn't actually in Vietnam, because the Viet Cong used, and the Chinese used Morse code. And he was like a savant Morse code reader. So he could, he could write down what they were saying and break their code and intercept their conversations. Low tech has its place in military history, which is interesting because, beepers, we're going, what? Beepers, really? Pagers? Are you kidding? Walkie-talkies? What? The idea is they're going underneath the radar because who monitors pagers? Well,
Right.
apparently the Mossad caught on and did this. Here's what's horrific. And here it's a weird litmus test, but let me throw it out there. My wife, Janine, is one of the best people I know, certainly one of the most moral. And her take on this was this was terrible. Now, if she thinks that, then there's a pretty good chance that it is awful. And it is awful. It killed family members. It killed children, as Ted said, 4 of the victims so far are
At
children.
least so far, yeah. Mm-hmm.
This was indiscriminate. It was aimed at a civilian population, although you could make the case that these were sold or given to, Hezbollah, who are not great guys. Regardless, the fact that you're setting off a bomb and you don't know where, that's terrorism.
Well, that's true. I mean, look, a lot of Hezbollah people and Hamas members are not engaged in fighting at all, right? I mean, that's something that people don't really understand, right? I mean, there are Hezbollah file clerks, there are Hezbollah medics, there are Hezbollah nurses. It's basically has all the characteristics of a government. That was true about Hamas as well. And I guess it still is true in some respects. So even if you're targeting Hezbollah, you're also taking out a lot of people who are not really represent any kind of security threat to Israel. Scott, my hard question for you is this. I suspect that an Israeli might respond to you. What's the difference between this and bombing Gaza, right? Like if you bomb Gaza, you aim a missile or a bomb at presumably, hopefully, a Hamas target, let's say an individual or a facility, and because it's densely populated and it's war and you can't see from the sky what you're who else is around, or they might just show up after the thing was fired, you end up killing a lot more innocent civilians who just happen to be nearby than you do killing. I mean, you could argue that this is less indiscriminate than the bombing campaign. I mean, at least all these, as far as we know, all these devices did belong to Hezbollah. I'm sure the vast majority of people who were hurt were the intended targets, as opposed to in the the bombing campaign over Gaza. Wouldn't it be fair if this is an act of terrorism, isn't the bombing of Gaza an indiscriminate act of terrorism? I'll go even further and say I think all aerial bombardment, no matter how it's used and against whom and under what context, is an act of indiscriminate terrorism, because you can never really know who else is around, and you always end up killing a lot of innocent people, as we've seen in the drone wars.
Yeah, we have surgical strikes. Remember that? I would argue that if I was arguing for Israel, I would argue saying that the operation in Gaza is a military operation that does differentiate it from a terrorist action. This beeper story is a terrorist action. Yeah, you got the guys you wanted to get, but they could have been at the market. They could have been at the movies. They could have been, who knows? They could have been just walking down the street at a cafe. Mm-hmm. That is an act of terror. And this is definitely meant to be an act of terror. This is a shot across the bow of Hezbollah saying, we know where you are. We know how you work. We're going to target you. You're gone.
And we have spies inside your midst, so you can't trust that you have any security.
It is really, as far as a terrorist action goes, it's pretty spot on. These guys, I guarantee you the surviving members of Hezbollah are looking over their shoulders right now and not using beepers or their walkie-talkies.
No, I'm sure they're not.
Or their Walkman or their, 8-track players. Should this be
or their radar detector or their CB radio or
I think that, what Israel is doing is like, okay, we're tired of this bullshit. Let me just tell you what I think the psychological or the political act they're performing here, because all things are political, is to say, listen, we've been victims long enough. Fuck this bullshit. We're just going after them the way they've gone after us. The problem with that is you then lose the moral high ground. Now, there's a number of people, yourself included, I suspect, who would say they've already lost it with their actions in Gaza.
I would say that they lost it on October 8th. You get to, like we were talking about this morning on my radio show, and I suggested to John Kiriakou, my colleague, that the smart move for Hezbollah now would be to not retaliate militarily at all, and then throw open the hospitals, invite the international press corps in with cameras, and like, look at this little girl whose legs were blown off by the Israelis. Look at this little boy dead because of the Israelis. Look at this woman, this mother of 5, killed by the Israelis. That would be far more damaging to the Israelis than anything that they can bomb them with. And I think the Israelis on October 7th, they had that decision to face. They could have done the same thing on 9/11. The United States could have played the victim and been like, poor us, feel sorry for us, and the world would have. I remember the headline of which said, "We are all Americans." But that changed because of the Bush administration and their militaristic response to it. I think
Hezbollah and their history.
You can play the victim, and that gives you the moral high ground. If you decide to retaliate, you lose the moral high ground, especially if you retaliate hard.
Well, and retaliate in kind. Oh my God, there was a horrible terrorist attack. They massacred children, and young people at a music festival. Mm-hmm. So we're going to go back and massacre people. They're young people. The moral equivalency, and that's what they're going to try. And I suspect, knowing Netanyahu and the type of the people he's trying to appeal to in his country, this probably plays pretty well. But in the world stage, and I think a large number of Israelis, the same thing. Now, Hezbollah, it's just not that would be so far off brand for them to go, oh, well, an eye for an eye, we're going to stop. That stops right now. That's not who they are. That's not what they are. And now that an Iranian minister was also involved in this operation, couple that with other Israeli attacks on Iran and Iranians, I suspect that this is just going to be another escalation. Now, what does that mean? It scares the shit out of me, Ted, frankly, where this is headed in terms of Israel and Iran. Hezbollah, they're a group of, it's a small group in southern Lebanon. Mm-hmm. It's a significant one, but still a small group. But when you talk about 2 nuclear powers, Iran, potentially, probably, and Israel, which is, it's almost when you see Pakistan and India go at it, you're going, oh, terrifying. Well, here we go. Let the mushroom clouds start a blooming.
Away we go.
So, for the first time, I'm looking at Israel. I'm going, there's a part of me that frankly is looking at this operation going, that was pretty awesome. That was pretty smart.
Well, from a tactical standpoint, you have to be so impressed. But it's like a lot of stuff is like that, right? Like the assassin, like how the Mossad systematically set out to assassinate the Munich terrorists at the 1972 Olympics, or for that matter, SEAL Team 6, to a certain extent, how they assassinated Osama bin Laden. But in both of those cases, you also have to say, okay, it was cool, it's impressive, but it was also wrong. These people should have all been arrested and put on trial. That's what we do in our society. We don't send goons to assassinate people, or I guess we do, but we're not supposed to.
Well, I'm looking at can I tie that in? There's a peripheral issue here, and that's the killing of the assassin wannabe there in Pennsylvania who tried to shoot Donald Trump.
Mm.
and Nick DeZier. They shot him. They killed him. And I'm looking back on the history of assassinations. Lee Harvey Oswald, who shot and killed a cop, is taken alive.
Not for long, though.
Sirhan taken alive. James Earl Ray taken alive. Arthur Bremer, who shot George Wallace, taken alive. The two, Squeaky Fromm and Sarah Jane Moore, who tried to assassinate Gerald Ford, taken alive. There's a history of taking these people, and there's value in taking them alive for obvious reasons. Well, apparently we don't do that anymore, except for the guy at the golf course. And they did try to shoot him, by the way, just to be clear. They did try.
Yeah, they
It wasn't
missed.
for want of trying, but because of the awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping competence that is the Secret Service.
Yes. Yes, that would be correct.
So getting back to Israel, Ted, does this move the needle away from people like me who support Israel?
That is a good question, because it's never like, people like me are quicker to say, okay, this or that is a deal breaker. But, that's not how public opinion works. It's in dribs and drabs. A lot of people were supportive of the Vietnam War for whatever reason after Tet into 69 and 70, but for whatever reason, they had had enough by 71. You know what I mean? It's just,
50,000 American dead kids for what? We were being lied to, saying that was being as an effective offensive.
Right. Maybe the publication of the Pentagon Papers in that case is enough to tip them. Right. So
I agree with you. Bringing in Western press to look at the carnage that this caused. Show the funerals of the children. Really directed towards.
Well, at one of the funerals, there was another fatal explosion. Yeah. Like, holy shit.
Once one beeper blows up, Ted, if I hear one beeper blows up, I'm getting rid of my beeper.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I have to admit, I haven't really looked at my cell phone quite the same way ever since this story broke.
Did you see the video of the guy who actually, you hear a beep, he kind of looks down at it and then it explodes. So I'm pretty convinced there was a message. And he just drops. It was a significant charge of explosives.
Yeah.
Also, given what's being blown up, that the explosion is so close to a body, that means body parts are being ejected into other bodies. Think about this for a moment. So the for an injury to, okay, you're going to get seriously injured, but you're also going to have a really significant potential for infection. It's a really dastardly thing to do. So does this change my view of Israel? A little bit. Does it a lot? I would not say a lot. But yeah, definitely. And I think how I've been on the Gaza.
Yeah, you're very
issue.
pro. Yeah, well, let's get to Gaza. The anniversary of October 7th is coming up in just 3 weeks.
Wow.
People are going to look back. Let's just go over what's happened, right? So officially, at least 42,000 Palestinians are dead. Probably, according to the Lancet, the number is closer to 200,000 to 300,000, which makes more sense anyway. The Hamas is still a potent fighting force. So the Israelis have not succeeded in their goal of neutralizing Hamas or rendering them impotent. So the war hasn't worked, right? And then much of the Gaza Strip has been leveled. By some accounts, 70 to 90% is now flattened. The West Bank is now a hot zone for Israeli raids. They're going in and systematically trashing all the infrastructure, like deliberately depaving the streets with bulldozers so the people there don't have paved roads, and like blowing up their water mains and so on. It's an act of, it's terrorism, really. It's state terrorism, all on behalf of the settlers there. Given how this all started, it started in 1948, but given how it started recently with the killing by Hamas of 1,200 people, and of whom about 500 were IDF soldiers. And now where we are, do you think, I'm not gonna, I'm not even gonna, I'm just gonna leave it blank. What do you think of Israel's actions so far? And would you recommend, what do you think they should do going forward?
Well, I hate to make this a two-part question, a two-part answer. I think in terms of the theater of public opinion, people who don't dive deep into the issues quite as much as you and I do, I would say that this is probably not going to affect that segment of the population. They're not going to care because they're going to say, yeah, these bastards had it coming. They don't know who the bastards are. They don't know who, then they shouldn't have been near their children. I don't know how you explain or justify that. The actions in the West Bank are less easy to justify, but given the context, it finally struck me the other day, Ted, what Israel was doing and how they could justify it. I'm not sure if they've used this language, but I'm going to now. Going into Gaza, you could say, Hamas was foisted on the Palestinian population of those areas. That Hamas
By Israel, by the way.
Well, okay, but they also could not eject them. They tried that in some instances, they really did, and they didn't do it. This is Israel doing it for them. I'm just telling you what the rationale is.
I'm listening.
And in that context, then that makes some sense, again, for people who aren't paying that close of attention. The actions up in Lebanon with the pagers and the walkie-talkies. We're being terrorized, therefore we're going to terrorize them back. That's an argument that really resonates with 10-year-olds. And that's really the American psyche now.
Well, and of course, obviously, Hezbollah says that Israel's been terrorizing them, right? Lebanon.
Well, of course. This is an actual act of terrorism. I don't think there's any other way to define it, there just isn't. This was an act of terrorism. It was clearly designed to scare the shit out of Hezbollah members.
And it's definitely an act of terrorism in that, right? What is terrorism? It is an act of violence, usually, but not always, directed towards civilians, that is meant to sap political will from a group of people, right? That's what it was,
right? And it's very mafioso.
Although I would argue that's what. Yeah, go ahead. It is very mob. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very mob. We're not just going to kill you; we're going to kill your family, which to most of us is more terrifying for obvious reasons.
You can't hide. This could be anything. Yeah.
And so,
it reminds me a little bit of this story during the apartheid period when Stephen Biko, who was a activist in the African National Congress, which was of course the leading anti-apartheid party. Stephen Biko's received in the mail like a Mandela T-shirt for the size of his kids, and his kid put it on. The shirt had been soaked in and dried in acid, so that when his little boy wore the shirt, he was severely injured with third-degree burns on the upper half of his body. This is like that. That's an act of terrorism, right?
So going forward, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the Security Council, because the United States has veto power, and is a permanent member, nothing's going to go through there. They can pass. True. And the worst that can happen is some kind of referendum or whatever they call it, going through the general body of the UN, and it's going to a general condemnation of the act, blah, 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 which means nothing. But unless unless you see Trump and Harris say, we condemn this is wrong, the United States can't condone this anymore, they'll just keep going on.
I don't see
just
Trump,
keep happening.
I don't see Trump doing it at all.
No, of course not. No, this kind of shit he loves.
Yeah,
he died. True. He died like a dog. I think we finally, like you said, I've actually stolen your line, by the way, Ted. I've used we finally discovered the sell-by date of presidential candidates is 77. Because this guy has totally lost it. Cognitively. So yeah, I think we've covered it. I think that's where we stand now. And is it going to move the needle on America's support, Americans' support of Israel. It's not, because it still has an overwhelming numbers. This won't change unless Hezbollah decides to play the media card. And I don't know that they're that smart. I really don't.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a heinous act. This was, and I say, oh, the children, but this was literally like, this guy could be driving his kid to school or to the park or something. We don't care. Whoever planted these bombs and set them off did not care who was around them.
No. No, I mean, they knew, obviously, look, this was very well planned. They knew exactly what was going to happen, and they knew how it was going to happen. You know, that's it, right? There's nothing more to be said. I mean, so they just didn't give a shit. And it'll be interesting. I mean, the Biden and the Biden-Harris White House, they are in a pickle because their ally is really, you know, they've gone rabid. And I guess my question to you that I was trying to, I want to like sort of, you know, insist on a more direct answer. You know, I mean, what Israel has done so far, I would say is not working. Okay. And so do you agree?
No, I think it's working in part. Of course it's working. When you have that kind of massive action, you're going to catch some of the bad guys. And I believe they have, but they haven't got
still there. I mean, Hamas it doesn't matter which ones you kill. I mean, the point is Hamas is still, if you're Israel and your only goal is, we just want Hamas to be gone. That has not been accomplished, and it doesn't seem that it's going to be accomplished. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay. I think that's fair, because you and I talked about this many months ago, and it reminded both you and I of the war on terror.
Yes.
Which is like, what does that mean? I mean, what exactly, and how do you win that? What does victory look like? When you plant your flag, where?
Mm-hmm.
This felt very much like that. And Hamas, being this, you know, a squirrely, large organization, is going to be difficult to squash, as it were. So yes, I would say, has it been totally effective? No, but I think it's been effective to a pretty large degree. They know where they are. There are pockets of Hamas still in Gaza, but they know where they are. They've narrowed Hamas's reach. They can now go back in and rebuild,
mm-hmm.
and have, you know, you're going to have a Vichy government in place. You know that. You and I
don't think they're going to find a V. I mean, here's the thing. That's what that's what the Israelis want. I don't know that they can find one.
Of course they can, Ted. So you
I think Hamas is still going to be, honestly, the government of Gaza. I mean, I think the Israelis have fucked up. I think they are. I'm not even looking at it, you know, from a moral standpoint or a PR standpoint. From their own point of view, they have not accomplished. They have not made a dent into what they're trying to do. They have. I mean, Hamas is not gone. They are, and if anything, I'm going to say they're stronger than before, because in the eyes of desperate, pissed off Palestinians, now, where are we right now? They're like, well, the only people, they're like, the Israelis are scum, right? They all think that the Israelis are scum. Anyone who thought otherwise now thinks they're scum. And then they're like, well, who's fighting the Israelis? Hamas. They're the only ones. I mean, it's like, if you're a Gazan, you're on Team Hamas. You have to be. I mean, the Israelis have done nothing to win hearts and minds, and there's no other political entity around that can compete with Hamas.
I don't know about that.
It's they're like the Taliban in Afghanistan. They're the only game in town.
Yeah, but as Israel, like I said, rebuilds, I'm doing air quotes here, rebuilds, they're not going to allow a place at the table for Hamas. There will be, it will be combating governments.
If they rebuild, which I think is not going to happen, but let's just say, if they're not going to rebuild with the Palestinians still there, but let's just say they did do that, then what you're looking at is a repeat of the 2002 Loya Jirga in Afghanistan, where the U.S. installed Hamid Karzai as their Vichy regime. Now we see how that turned out. I mean, it won't take, you know what I mean? Hamid Karzai and his successor, Ashraf Ghani, never controlled more than 5% of Afghanistan. That's what this will be like. You can put some fucking puppet into an office building in Khan Yunis or Gaza City, but that doesn't mean they're the ruler of Gaza.
No, but they will be the recognized one, and they have the strength of the Israeli armed forces behind them. So I suspect that's where we're going. That's where we're going to end up. I know you and I disagree on the rebuilding. Yeah. I think it's going to be, they're not going to be. They're faced with.
Why would the Israelis have any desire to rebuild anything for the Palestinians? Let's be clear here. The Israelis are racist. They hate the Palestinians. They think the Palestinians are subhuman scum who shouldn't be there and happen to be on their land like roaches and need to be exterminated. I mean, that's a fact. So, like, why would they rebuild anything for these terrorist scum?
World opinion. I think you have to put the Palestinians somewhere. In addition, Ted, I mean, that's just a long history of the Palestinians. Jordan, ruthlessly kicked them out. Syria ruthlessly kicked them out. Egypt ruthlessly kicked them out. It's the people in search of a homeland. A two-state solution. I know it seems like a million miles away from here, but that's the only. I disagree. I mean, it's dead for now. You're right. Okay, but I think you still have to cling to that and hope for that, and that's okay. You can roll your eyes at me, but I just don't think it'll happen.
I mean, who knows, right? I mean, it could. I mean, for a long time, I believed in it, but now I think the problem is that both sides, but particularly the Israelis, they want the whole thing for themselves. And that's the problem. They don't want to split it up. They don't want to partition it. They don't want to go the India-Pakistan route. They want to, everybody wants it all. Mostly the Israelis, but also the Palestinians.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. But so you think basically, so if you are the new prime minister of Israel, God help you, the
first Roman Catholic head of Israel,
do you just keep on keeping on, or do you change the military or any other strategies or tactics?
You're going to have to convince me, first of all, the Mossad and the armed forces are going to have to convince me the benefit of the attack that just occurred in southern Lebanon. A. B. I think the incursion in the West Bank of the settlers has been bullshit, and I would pull back. I would just simply say, you know what? This is bullshit. We have treaties ceding this territory to the Palestinians, and you guys don't belong there. You can either relocate, we'll give you 6 weeks, and then we pull back our forces and we give you no defense.
700,000 Jews. I mean, that's a lot of people who are there, and they're
broke the law.
Up, and they're living in. Well, some of them broke the law, right? I mean, the Israeli government legally recognizes as legitimate quite a few of those buildings. I mean, these settlements are, they're houses, they're apartment blocks, they have schools. It's not like a bunch of.
No, I've seen them. They look like a housing. Yeah, they look like a housing development anywhere suburban USA. It's really remarkable. But listening to them talk about Palestinians is all you have to do is rewind to 1930s Germany and hear the typical German or Austrian talk about Jews. Yeah. I mean, it's the language is shocking. And I think you need to present that to the people of Israel and say, we can't do this anymore. This has happened to a group of people. And now we have our own country. We're not going to do it to anybody else. If I'm Prime Minister Scott Stantis,
you won't be Prime Minister for very long.
No. I'll go the Shimon Peres. Was he the one who was or was that Rabin who was?
It was Peres.
Yeah, who was pop by some right wing loony.
That was Rabin.
Yeah. That's you're right, because what I'm suggesting is Israel go back to the model of we are going to not do the eye for an eye, and now they're doing it apparently very much.
Shimon Peres, by the way, I don't know if you were there at the editorial cartoonist convention in Las Vegas.
Oh God, yes.
But he's the one who had the Nixon meets Elvis moment where Shimon Peres shook hands with Wayne Newton for us.
Yeah, that was our president of the AAEC, the Association of American Editorial Cartoonists, Michael Ramirez, put that together. He had Wayne Newton.
Look,
With
that shit was funny.
it was surreal,
Yeah.
and it was also bankrupted the AAEC because we did not just fly out Mr. Perez, we flew out his security detail and two of his daughters.
Well, they were cute.
They were cute, and they were what happened in Vegas, I guess, stayed in Vegas.
If anything indeed happened in Vegas, because it
Yes.
stays there. So no, but I mean, so what about militarily? Would you keep bombing Gaza?
No.
And then so what would you do instead?
What I've suggested a million and one times, I'd start rebuilding it.
So you'd start, and then you'd say, okay, we're installing an interim provisional government that we can work with.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I think that does it for the
Shalom.
Middle East. Shalom. All right. We'll come back and talk about something else.
Yeah,
right
that's even worse. So it's racism. Woohoo.
Hey there, welcome back to the DMZ America Podcast for September 18th, 2024. I'm Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
And I'm Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
And I had, so obviously all eyes of the nation are on, as usual, on Springfield, Ohio.
Oh, God.
Ever since the allegation, Springfield is a hardscrabble town. It's near where I grew up. My mom's best friend, Anne, if you're out there, hello, lived in Springfield. Springfield was a sad little town that had seen much better days a long time ago. It's close between Dayton and Columbus, but it's really much closer to Dayton along Interstate 70. And it's a town of about 50,000 people. Over the last few years, since 2020, there have been about, depending on whose numbers you believe, anywhere between 12 and 20,000 Haitian refugees have arrived there and found jobs and lived there. And they're basically, they have official asylum status from the US government, which entitles them to a certain assistance, including prepaid debit cards that they get every week. Over the weekend, I visited family back in Dayton, and part of my family actually is from Springfield or still lives in Springfield. So that became, I was like, how does it feel to be in the middle of the national news? And so, people had thoughts, people had opinions, and basically, it all centered down to, that allegation that was spread by Trump and JD Vance, of course, famously by Trump, like they're coming, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the pets. And so about these unfounded allegations, or should say unsourced allegations, unverified, unconfirmed allegations that Haitian migrants had captured or stolen people's cats and dogs and eaten them. There also was an allegation that people were grabbing ducks and or geese from the town pond and consuming them. Now, I think it is important to point out that people have, including white native-born Americans, have stolen and eaten geese and ducks from town ponds all over the country. That is a thing that has happened. People eat them. So but we don't know if that's happened in Springfield or not. The view at the table at lunch was that, yes, it was a mixed bag. So basically the Democrats at the table said, well, the geese and the ducks may have happened, but not the dogs and the cats. The Republicans at the table were like, yes, actually the cats and the dogs too. So there we go.
Based on what? I mean, and this is where I get furious. I mean, here's the thing, Ted. I mean, and you and I, for instance, were really early on, from the moment of Joe Biden swearing in, said that the man has cognitive issues and should not be president of the United States.
True.
Finally, they have the debate in 2024 where it becomes abundantly clear he's not just unable, he is really unable to be president of the United States, and steps down as a candidate as the Democratic nominee. Okay, so that was a rumor, but it wasn't a rumor substantiated by, first of all, you and I have eyes and ears. We could see the guy. The Hunter Biden laptop story, which was debunked widely by Democrats saying that's not true. That couldn't have happened. Who does that? No one could have done that. He didn't. This isn't true. This thing doesn't exist. And you're going, well, but you proved that it didn't. It sounds like it did. And it turns out that it did and had fairly incriminating evidence on it and pictures and other things that they've discovered on it. So, and from my point of view, for instance, COVID, you had, I had COVID, damn near killed me. You had it, you got very sick.
Mhm.
We both agreed that, at 60 years old, you've had the flu a few times. You know what the flu feels like. This did not feel like the flu. This was something very different.
Mhm.
And so, could this have escaped? Not maliciously, but just because the protocols are so shitty and not followed in China, that it could have come from the lab whose main focus was this kind of thing. And I kept saying, I think you have to keep an open mind on this.
A lab,
Now,
a lab in which, parenthetically, Anthony Fauci apparently had invested.
yes, we invested American money, by the way.
Yes.
Yay, Fauci. And completely, and he was on the spirit. And what really convinced me, Ted, is when the WHO, the World Health Organization, said there is no way that this came out of a lab in Wuhan. Who paid for the study? No way that this came out of a lab. Who paid for it? China. But there's still no way that this came out of a lab. The WHO has been completely and thoroughly corrupted by the Chinese government and was a fairly unreliable source to define that. Now it's become pretty much common knowledge and pretty much here that it did come out of the lab in Wuhan, not from the wet market.
That is the widely held, almost universally held belief of the U.S. intelligence community now.
But this is one of those stories that, Ted, I mean, for 100 years, Americans have painted immigrants, especially immigrants of color, as, recently, well, they practice the number one religion in Haiti is voodoo. Well, that's not true. The number one religion in Haiti is Roman Catholicism, but why let facts get in the way of a good story? Do you really believe that they would just give that up when they came here? I go, yeah, they certainly would. I mean, there may be other things. First of all, voodoo likes goats. They don't like dogs and cats. Goats seem to be
and they like chickens too.
And chickens. So, okay, you can have this hyperbole, you can have this, but prove it to me and don't make it. And it's so obviously, Ted, to my mind, a racist dog whistle that they're eating the pets, they're eating the dogs. Vance, when he's on CNN, and you could see the look on his face. Have you seen this? It's hilarious. Yes, when he says, yeah, I can make stuff up because if it helps push, increase interest in this issue. And the look on his face was like, oh, fuck, I just said that out loud. Shit.
Come back words.
He clearly, and he's doubling down, and they're both doubling down, making shit up. I mean, Trump is going there. They're having an anti-immigrant march there today, or Friday rather. I mean, I'm sorry, there's nothing to substantiate this. And then when you do the deep dive into this, is this actually happening? The dogs and cats, absolutely no substantiation. The geese and the ducks, the only substantiation they have is a video of someone carrying a goose carcass out of the park. Turns out that video is of a guy who works at, say it with me, kids, the park, and was removing a carcass of a goose that passed away. Was it nefarious? Was it foul play? Was it murder?
Well, what if it was a frame up, Scott? What if the goose he seemed to be driving in his little goose car, and then you see when you find the scratch marks on the side, the paint exactly matches a Haitian car.
The plates go back to a Haitian immigrant. Here's the other thing: is I'm really sick and tired of people. Same guy who was saying that this was, that this, will they leave their voodoo behind, is the same guy who was saying, that these are the illegal immigrants that are doing all this. These aren't illegal immigrants.
No, they're all legal.
They're all here.
There might be one or two illegal, but yeah, they're
okay.
Yeah, they're definitely, these are, and well, that's been the vast majority of people who have crossed the border in recent years. nativists have characterized them all as illegals or illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, but by definition, they're not. These are not what they call gotaways, right? People who like swim across the Rio Grande and then run away when the border patrol approaches them. These are people who literally go to the Mexican side of the border, get on the internet, get on their smartphones, download the CBP app. They apply for an appointment. I'm not even kidding. They get an appointment. They wait sometimes weeks for an appointment. They present themselves at the border crossing at the appointed time. They're like, here I am for my 340. And, and there they go, right? They're off to, and then they're processed and released inside the United States. They're given certain strictures and they have to follow them. And that's it. So these are people who are in the system. These are legal immigrants. It's the same exact procedure as Ellis Island. People, they came in, they could have been kicked out if they didn't like at Ellis Island. If you were deemed to have like, TB or something, they would send you back to Europe. But for the most part, they were just like, America wants immigrants. And, if you have 2 arms and 2 legs, pretty much you can come in. And that's what happened here.
And the last lie that's being foisted by the Republicans, particularly the top of the ticket, is that these were somehow shipped to Springfield by the government. Again, the same person who spouted the misinformation on these other things spouted this one as well. The American government did not send them there. They came there on their own. They were, one person went there. Springfield said that they needed people. They had a lot of jobs. There is some job growth in Springfield. We don't have enough people to fill these positions. Haitians said, hey, come here. There's room and there's jobs, man. And they showed up. And that's how immigrants, that's how immigrants work. I mean, that's how immigration has always worked in the United States. I mentioned on your show that, here in Birmingham, Alabama, of all places, there were mining jobs and there was a lot of Portuguese. Why Portuguese? Why not? And a lot of Greeks came here because 1 or 2 of them came here, started little restaurants and said, hey, there's no Greeks here and they don't have Greek food.
Now that's how this works. I mean, in the Hamptons where I used to live, it turned out that the vast majority of Mexican-American groundskeepers and contractors, auto mechanics, and so on who lived there were all from the same little town in the same province of Mexico. One family or a few people had come back in the 1970s. They wrote or called back home and said, oh, it's nice here. You should come and join. And they did. And that just rinse, lather, repeat. That's what happens, right? I mean, that's how you end up with, sort of similar behavior here in New York right now. We have a huge influx of like Venezuelan and other northern South America and Central American immigrants. They're all selling candy on the streets. Obviously, the word has gotten out. You go to this place, you buy candy, then you sell it for a profit. There was a period during which every barber shop in New York City was run by a Bukharan Jew from Uzbekistan. I don't know why, but
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, you just throw up your arms and say, someone in their family, someone from their village said, hey, you can come here.
Come on over.
The
water's
make money.
Warm. Come on in. Yeah, it's funny about the Uzbeks too, because they were used to nobody knowing where their country was. So they would just be like, yeah, I'm from, over there. And I would know. and I remember one time the barber's like, Uzbekistan? I'm like, yeah, I've been to, Tashkent, I've been to Bukhara, Khiva. And he's like, have you had the food? And I'm like, yeah, the food sucks. And he's like, you have been to Uzbekistan.
Is it what makes it so bad?
Oh, it's basically like greasy mutton on a stick.
I went to, I'm Lithuanian.
Or rice pilaf, which they call plav.
I'm Lithuanian when they had a Lithuanian restaurant in Chicago, fairly well known, called the Grand Duke. And we went and we said, let us have the Lithuanian sample platter. Oh my God. You've never seen so much potato and cabbage in your life.
Oof. Yeah. I'm not surprised. That's like also in Uzbekistan, I made the mistake of going to a tripe themed restaurant.
Oh God, that sounds horrible just on the face of it. Why would you go? Why
There
would you
must
do
have
that
been
to
like
yourself, Ted?
150. Well, it was all in Cyrillic. I couldn't read the menu. I didn't know.
Tripe
It was like 150 tripe based dishes.
Were
It was
any of them any
Tripapalooza.
good?
No,
Tripapalooza.
no, not at all. It was on so many levels an absolutely horrific and surreal experience.
Oh my God. Yeah. So getting back to Springfield, I'm not sure what Haitian dishes would be like. I have no idea. I guess cat and dog, presumably. And
No, I've had Haitian food actually.
It's got to be good.
There's a huge Haitian community in Miami, and it's good. Well, there's goat. They do eat goat. There's like sort of gumbo-y type things with rice.
I would assume
it's like your sort of Central Caribbean kind of vibe. It's good though, or it can be. It's spicy.
So I dismiss this just because there's, doing a very mild dive into the issue, Ted, there's no evidence. There's no evidence of this happening. And so people want it to happen. I mean, I know that MAGA people want it to be true.
Well, because certain dogs and cats have it coming. You and I both know that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, there's some, well, you and I would probably differ on which one.
Certain bull terriers, like the ones that used to attack me when I delivered the newspaper as a kid.
Did they?
Yeah, the
those
fuckers. Okay. They need to be like, if someone just decides to like make a dinner out of them, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I don't hate cats. I don't have one, and I don't care for them. That's an exaggeration. I mean, I
just don't care.
Yeah, I'm ambivalent towards the whole cat issue. Clovis was great when I stayed with you. He was very welcoming.
He's a very nice cat.
He is.
And he's going to taste so fucking good. Now that it's okay.
I think that's the other side of this.
Whenever I look at dogs and cats now, ever since this thing started, I was on the subway and I saw like some lady had like a little, actually it was a dude. He had like a little chihuahua in his bag. And I was just thinking, you gonna eat that or what?
Did you say that?
No.
Oh, that would be funny.
But that's just what I'm thinking. Like every time I see a dog or cat, I'm like, I wonder what it would taste like.
Well, you and I are very interested in the real politic of things. I mean, Trump clearly feels, he's doubling down on it, like he does. Is this, tell me what he sees that we don't.
Okay. I think I know what so Donald Trump, yes, he lies like the day is long, but he lies about specifics. But what he does do, and this is like really the secret to his support, is that he exposes and highlights big previously covered up truths. And this is not an exception here. So what's going on in Springfield is that there is a major culture clash. Basically, a city that, a city's population has gone up by 25% in 4 fucking years. And basically there was no communication on the part of city officials in terms of, hey, listen, guys, this is what we're doing. If I were the mayor there, I would have been like, look, I need to explain this to y'all. As I don't need to tell you that our city has seen better days. We're suffering from deindustrialization, just like the rest of the Midwest. We need population. Look at what they did down the road in Dayton. They invited a lot of Iraqi immigrants and refugees to move in. They also had Vietnamese refugees after the Vietnam War. Those people all became taxpayers, contributing to building new businesses, many of whom hire local white and Black people from here in the United States. So that's going to happen here. We really need the influx, but there's going to be some growing pains. We don't have a lot of room. This is a small town. We're going to have to build some housing. There's going to be some inconveniences. There's going to be some traffic where there never was before. You might apply for a job that a Haitian guy gets that you don't get, and that's going to kind of suck for you. But don't worry. Here's what we're going to do: A, B, C, D to try to address your problems. If you have an issue, we're going to have hearings. We're going to allow people to speak up. We're going to we have programs to address all that. They don't do any of that in this country. I don't know whatever happened to the fireside chat, that FDR did, where it's like, okay, so here's what's going on. This is why we're doing what we're doing. We're trying, let me explain, please bear with us. We know these things take time. At some point, American leaders, local, state, and federal, stopped even bothering to explain anything to the voters. They just do it. And then it just happens. So, in the United, like here in New York, they reduced all the speed limits all over the city to basically 25 miles an hour in most places. And then they put up traffic cameras everywhere. There's this new program called Vision Zero, which is, and it's like, terrible name. What does it mean? It means the vision is that there will be zero pedestrian deaths because of this initiative. No mayor ever sat down and explained it to New Yorkers. All right, so listen, we're going to have this situation. We're slowing everything down. Here's why. It's going to cause more traffic. It's going to cause, people are going to get more tickets, but here's why we're doing it. They don't, there's no feedback. They just, and I think Trump has tapped into people who are, mad as hell and don't want to take it anymore. And he's like, people don't really care if pets have been eaten. What they care is about, they feel like their way of life is under threat. They feel like they're being radically inconvenienced. They see, I heard this at the family lunch, they really resent that the US government hands prepaid debit cards to immigrants, to new arrivals. But, these Americans, many of whom have lost their jobs or have, used to have great jobs in a factory that paid $50 an hour and now making $12 an hour, who are really struggling, they don't get any money. And it's like, I'm an American. I was here first. Why are these people getting fucking money from my taxes? And I don't get shit. Donald Trump taps into those resentments. I mean, Donald Trump could be completely neutralized if politicians would learn how to talk. But look at Kamala Harris. She won't fucking tell us what she would do as president of the United States. We have no fucking idea what she would do. So I don't know. That's I think that so when Donald Trump talks about the cats and the dogs, it's not about cats and dogs. It's about shorthand for these migrants are coming and stealing your jobs and fucking you up.
But they're not what's curious in this instance, and did you actually get into Springfield? Did you see it?
No.
Okay, because I'm curious to know what Springfield actually looks like on it. If you listen to NPR did a story, PBS did a story on it and how terrorized the Haitian population is now.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I'm curious, prior to all of this bullshittery, what the city was like. Was there a real bashing of heads? The Haitians weren't taking jobs away. That's what's weird about this, is that they weren't taking jobs away from anybody. Everybody in that town had a job if they wanted one, and a good one. The Haitians came because there was a need for labor, and that's where the word went out, and they showed up and they filled the jobs, and the
well, that's the official story, but that's not what people who live there are saying. They're saying that they were passed over for jobs in favor of cheap Haitian labor.
Okay. I mean, I do have to prove that to me, other than, people say
I believe it. I believe that completely. I mean, I bet it's,
I bet that's totally possible.
I bet it's happened to some people, right? If it happens to one person, think about it. One person knows 50 people who know 50 more people. I mean, word spreads. I mean, it reminds me of, all the 501B visa programs for people who are tech workers. Officially, companies like Apple or whatever, they have to, or Google, they want to get say Indian or Pakistani people to come to, or China to come to California and work in Menlo Park or whatever. They have to claim, under penalty of perjury, that they can't hire Americans. They can't find them. Please let us bring in some foreigners. But in reality, they don't try to. Everybody knows there's tons of unemployed and underemployed STEM workers in the United States, mostly in their 40s and 50s. And Silicon Valley doesn't want them. So they're unemployed. Now, to me, it's you should not be able to hire a single foreigner as long as there's a single unemployed American, who wants a job and is willing to train for it. But that's not how it is. And so, you can say, well, fuck that, but it's going to lead to resentment.
Well, I think the resentment's real. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, is it justified in a practical way? And I don't know that it is.
Well, it
But
may or may not be, but the resentment is the Israel, and that's kind of like that's the politics of it. And I think,
I get, they come into the country, they get free food, they get free this, they get free that. Little do they, I mean, you hear that a
I have
lot.
to admit, I kind of don't understand that, really. I mean,
Well, because I don't know that's necessarily entirely true, Ted, because you hear that here a lot.
no, that is true that they're getting payments. That's
Right,
that's
but Alabamian, the typical Alabamian sends $1 to Washington D.C. and goods and services gets $2.25 back. That's a
yes,
pretty damn good deal when you're
yeah. For
living
you
back
guys,
in.
sucks to be New York.
Well, I didn't tell you to live there.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
We
but
got
what's your
room down
point?
here.
But what does
We
that
got
have to
room
do
down
with?
here.
I know.
My point, well, no, my point is that usually you hear the people who are bitching and groaning the most about this stuff are still benefiting from this. Now, do they have? I don't know what they have, and I can't speak to your family and your relations. I don't know what their situation is, but I can tell you that, especially here, like Mississippi, Alabama, where you hear this most resentment, is completely and utterly unjustified, and simply not true. Now, up in Ohio, up in Springfield, it's going to get ugly. I mean, you're going to have the anti-immigration march this week. You're going to have Trump up there making shit up. He's going to put forward, I have Jean. She's right over here. Jean said that her cat had kittens and all the kittens are gone. They're gone. And you're just going to go, okay, who is she? And then the press will talk to her. And it turns out she's some Looney Tune who never had cats to begin with. I'm always very suspicious of this, but we probably spent way too much time on dogs and cats.
I guess the point is it's sort of like, look, Donald Trump's genius when it came to 2015, 2016 was that, unlike Hillary Clinton, when he drove in the back of his limousine and looked out the window at burned up, boarded up, shitty Midwestern Rust Belt towns, he thought to himself, man, it would probably really suck to live here. Now that's where it stops for him. Okay, there's not like, oh, I have an idea of how we could turn this all around. No. And that's clear because he was president for 4 years and he didn't even float something. Okay, so there's also, but then Hillary Clinton and then Joe Biden to a lesser extent, and now Kamala Harris to a greater extent, they don't look out the window and see that.
No,
they don't. Maybe they don't look out the window even. Maybe they just don't give a shit. But the point is that but just being able to say, man, I wouldn't want to live here. This place is a dump. America's fucking going down the shitter. This place sucks. People are like, yeah, that guy sees it. I mean, that's a big deal. It really is powerful.
You just expressed in a very concise way the appeal of Donald Trump. I've been trying to understand it. It's because he sees them. He doesn't do anything, doesn't give a shit about them, doesn't really, float any kind of reasonable plan.
No.
But he at least recognizes, that they exist. The liberal press, the liberal Democrat, the what presumably is the liberal wing of the Democratic Party, they don't see these guys. They don't see them. They don't see the schmuck who was making, as you described earlier, $40 an hour, and now they're struggling with a job that pays $8 an hour.
No.
And they say, well, what they want is their vote, but they don't do a goddamn thing to change their circumstances.
They don't even say that. They don't even pretend to see them.
No. And in fact, I've just finished a book I'll pass along to you that I'd love to know what you think. So that's a conversation for not the podcast, but it's been a fascinating book. But, the New York Times, they don't give a shit about people who are economically disadvantaged, white or, they don't care. They don't care. They do not care. They do not cover them.
No,
period.
They don't. No, they don't. Unless they're people of color, unless they're transgender, unless, they're women. I mean, look, okay, we're two old white guys, right? But it's a shitty time to be an old white guy. And you can totally make the argument that, like, old white guys have it coming because they've run everything forever. That's true. It's like, but, I think what's being forgotten here is those were the old white guys of the past. We're not those people. And like, you and I, we do okay. This isn't really about us, but it's like culturally and politically, it gets a little bit annoying after a while to constantly be told, like, I mean, even in dumb ways, like, I pitch a project in Hollywood. It's a little bit autobiographical. Ted, this is so great. If you weren't white, I could totally sell this. Or the other day, talking to a book publisher, oh my God, this memoir is so great. It's really too bad you're a white guy. And that's happening over and over. And you can say, again, people who are going to watch and listen to this, you can say, poor little Ted, with his 24 books and living in Manhattan, blah, blah, blah. And they're not wrong. But, so to me, I think, okay, I'm a big boy. I'll figure something out. Right. But and also this too shall pass. But I also kind of think, man, if, there but for the grace of God, I could be that laid off factory worker who really doesn't have any other skills and can't go anywhere else and can't finagle something. There's a lot of old white guys who are, they're confused and lost and basically hurt. Right. No, that's really important, Scott. It's hurt. And they feel like it's kind of like, you're hating on us. And what did we do? What did we do? I know our ancestors like stole slaves and, and raped the land and killed the Native Americans, but that wasn't us. And like, it wasn't even like our descendants, our ancestors really. I mean, our ancestors were poor and came in the 19th century.
Well, your family, my family came in the 20th century.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, half of my family came in the 19th century. But like basically most white Americans. So yeah, there's a lot of racial resentment. And so it's really easy for a demagogue like Donald Trump to riff on that. I will say, I criticized Harris quite a bit, but I'm going to give her major props for not running an identity campaign. She's letting her surrogates do it, but she's not emphasizing the fact that she's a woman or a person of color. Yeah. That's very smart. If she wins, it'll be in part because of that. Now, I've always said the other half of it is that she should run an issue campaign. She's not running an issue campaign.
No,
she's running a vibe campaign. And I guess this is for another podcast. She's running a vibe campaign. And I kind of get the sense that I don't really like her vibe. And I'm wondering if swing voters are going to like her vibe or not.
The numbers right now, if the polls are to be believed, it seems to be swinging her way right now. But that's because, true. But I got a call from a fellow cartoonist, a friend of ours last night, who was like completely and utterly enamored of Kamala, excuse me, but can't tell you why. That's a problem. I mean, he can't even, I'm assuming it's a he, can't even say, I like her position or I like that she's not Trump or. Oh, no, that's number one, not Trump. But I'm not Trump, and I'm not really.
Look, there are people who are worse than Donald Trump. If Dick Cheney were running against Donald Trump and and you put a gun to my head and said, vote for one, I'd be like, Trump. I mean, people think there's nothing worse. I mean, it's the biggest problem with Americans is that unlike Eastern Europeans, they don't understand that if anything's really bad, it can still get a lot worse.
And it has, by the way, if you know history, read history. Yeah, it's all written down. You don't have to go far.
Donald Trump is far from the worst.
And guess what? Democracy survived for 4 years of his presidency. It wasn't pleasant. I don't want to go through it again. It was exhausting.
Yeah.
But
he wouldn't finish these 4 years anyway.
No, he's too,
It would be President J.D. Vance for sure.
Oh my God, who would just make shit up. That would be
maybe. Anyway. I mean, God, there's nobody knows. It's like Kamala. Nobody knows what kind of president he would be. Don't forget, the guy was basically a Democrat in 2015.
Yeah, it's a weird nomination. Anyway, we should probably finish this up and go to the third and final segment.
All right.
Of the DMZ America podcast.
Here we go. And welcome to the third and without a doubt best of three segment of the DMZ America podcast for Wednesday, September 18th, 2024. I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall, and I am with.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right. A couple of breaking news stories today, which are fascinating, and they kind of dovetail into what we're going to talk about, and that's Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign and where it is and where it should go and where it ain't. Anyway, One, the Teamsters Union just announced within the last hour or so that they are not going to endorse anybody for president in the 2024 election. They are going to leave it up to the membership to vote for whomever they choose. Now, don't forget, the Teamsters have always been kind of an outlier in terms of unions. They haven't reflexively endorsed the Democrat. 1980, famously, they endorsed Ronald Reagan. So that's interesting. Number two, and a much bigger story. I mean, this is a massive story, and it's economic. I know don't turn off the podcast. There won't be much math, but stay with me on this. Ted, the Federal Reserve Board announced an interest rate cut of 0.5%. That is massive. Now, the question lies, Donald Trump went to war of words against the Federal Reserve Board. So they hate him. And, who can blame them? But this is the political timing, the economic timing. Now, people, you can say the prime rate is down 0.5. Well, if this happened 2 weeks before the election, no one would give a shit. It would have no impact. It would not mean much to most people. This means a lot to the economy. All of a sudden, this is the spark it needed. It's been kind of moribund. We were, and I have to hand it to the Biden administration and frankly, the Trump administration prior, but in the Biden administration to continue to do something I opposed, which was throw money into the economy. But we had a very soft landing coming out of the pandemic. But the economy's kind of been sluggish in the last year. This is going to light a fire. You're going to see employment numbers go through the friggin' roof. You're going to see new job creation go through the roof. You're going to see housing sales go through the roof, car sales go through the roof. This is going to be such a boon for Kamala Harris and her campaign that, she could not have prayed for or asked for a bigger gift, early Christmas gift, than she got in this interest rate cut. This is, Ted, I'm telling you, this is a massive story and will have profound effects on this election.
Scott, I 100% agree. That is true. That's exactly what's going to happen. And look, there is enough time for this to have an effect. The market's already built in a quarter point rate cut. So I think they were anticipating that no matter what. But now this will juice the economy. It will move the housing market. Which has been in the toilet. It's going to reduce credit card rates. It's going to make everybody feel like they have a little more cash in their pocket. It's a big deal. It's going to absolutely have a huge effect. I couldn't agree more. This is like right now, Kamala Harris is turning cartwheels.
Yes. And really, I'm just saying, is this the Fed playing politics? And Ted, I am absolutely convinced. I said I don't like conspiracy theories, but I'm absolutely
it's certainly
convinced.
Going to look like it. Certainly looks like it.
Well, it feels like it, and they have cause. Donald Trump when he was president, after being president, has been, has politicized and gone after them in a very, it used to be that the president couldn't say anything about them. Somehow they were, it's untoward to say anything about the golden, white, pure motivations of the Federal Reserve Board, that they somehow lived in a different universe where unicorns, farted gold. And we could, it was just, I don't know why that was, because I think to maintain their independence, you didn't want, and Donald Trump hated that because if he had gone in there and cut rates, he could have staved off some of the ramifications, at least in a short term, from the pandemic. But the fact of the matter is, 0.5 point is, I did not see that one coming, and I follow these guys in a weird, stocky kind of way. I hear you. Like there's something wrong with me, but this was much bigger, and they said there's more to come. What's weird, Ted, is I'm looking at the stock market right now. It is currently, what time is it here? It is 351. So it's closing to the stock market's going to close or has closed.
No, it's closing it's
it
already
had
closed. It closed. Yeah.
After the announcement, the stock market, the Dow went up 375 points and then it lost it all. And at this point, as I'm reading it right now, it's down 100 points. That's weird to me that they like say, woohoo. Oh, wait. I don't, the stock market acts in a very peculiar and irrational way sometimes. And I suspect in the next few days, you're going to see it ramp up and close its days at record highs. Certainly by November 5th, it's going to be just screaming along. And those of us who have a 401k who are at the age where we're looking to, cash it are going to be extremely happy.
True.
You have an extremely happy Scott. Does that mean he votes for Kamala Harris? I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. Never have, never will. But I have voted Libertarian. And so am I going to vote Chase Oliver or am I going to vote Kamala Harris?
Chase.
Yeah, I like Chase Oliver. Ted and I have talked about third party candidates numerous times. He's going Stein. I'll probably go Chase. And there's that.
I'd certainly vote Chase Oliver before I would vote for Kamala.
But can she coast to the presidency? I mean, I brought this up on your show earlier this week that Thomas Dewey ran in 48 and said nothing. Mm-hmm. His advisors all said, don't say anything, just don't be.
And it almost
Truman.
Worked.
Actually, Truman won pretty handily, even with the Dixiecrats winning in the South and with Henry Wallace running as a progressive. And the rest of the country. I mean, and Truman still won pretty handily. Dewey made a massive mistake. He should have picked one or two issues. This is my issue. I will challenge you, Ted, and I will challenge anyone listening. What is Kamala Harris's
abortion?
Okay. You think? I mean, is that? That's her
issue. That is her issue. I don't think it's credible. But maybe nobody cares, and I don't think people realize that, oh yeah, no, that makes sense because she has credibility. She's been talking about it for a while. Clearly people are pissed about it. She can't do shit about it. It's like the Supreme Court's going to decide it and the states are going to decide it. She can be like a moral leader on abortion. That's about it. She can be a cheerleader on abortion rights, but that's her only issue. Look, it's an important issue. My theory has been that people feel strongly about it, but they don't vote on it. That's been my theory. Now, however, the secret weapon for the Democrats might well be all these states that have ballot referenda on abortion rights in their state constitutions this November. There's quite a few. There's like, 8 or 9. And so there are people who will go and vote on that issue because unlike Kamala Harris, who doesn't have, 63, 64 votes in the Senate and won't, they can vote it in. And we've already seen a lot of, states like Ohio have really shocked people by voting for these amendments. They have done very well in red states. Even in Florida, there's a strong chance it will pass. So despite Ron DeSantis's best efforts. So there's going to be, so it could be that the abortion the referenda have coattails for the Democrats, starting with Kamala all the way down ticket.
Yeah, I'm wondering if if that's a strong enough issue. Like I think you need, like I said, you have to have 2 or 3 that Well,
that would be best.
Well, that would
3
be
would
practical.
be ideal. 3 would be best.
But abortion is,
she only has 1.
Well, that is
the middle class.
Which everybody, by the way, if you ever see surveys on the middle class, it's hilarious because it's everyone who makes between, I think it's $55,000 and $450,000.
Right.
Consider themselves.
She considers herself to be middle class, even though she's worth, I think, $8 million.
Is she really?
I think so. I'm gonna look that up. I looked this up fairly recently. She's not poor. Obviously, these are estimates.
As a U.S. senator, doesn't she have to file?
$8 million.
Yeah, she has to file. She can't, what her worth is. So this can't be a secret unless you're president of the United States, apparently. let me ask you about the gender gap, and then we're going to wrap things up.
By the way, I want to know how she invests. She was only worth 3.5 million in 2018.
Is that right?
Yeah, I want to know. It's like there's some kind of discussion group online called which is basically follows Nancy Pelosi's investment strategies. And apparently if you do that, you make bank.
Yeah, no, they've made the return is crazy because she knows what legislation is going to pass and she follows it, Yep. The gender gap, it's huge by every poll, every alchemy. There is a rumor, and this may be some bullshittery spread by the Democrats and the Kamala, is that there's the secret wife vote. Have you heard about this? That the wives are standing next to the husbands going, yes, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
I have heard
love
of this.
him. And that in fact, behind their husband's back, they're
fucking the pool boy and they're voting for the Democrat. Yeah, maybe
you can put it that way, I suppose. And we do here on the DMZ America podcast. Do you believe that? Do you believe that scenario? Because there's a lot of Democrats who are floating it online. I don't. It's one of those things. Ted, it's like dogs and cats. It's predicated on nothing.
I think Democrats and Republicans, if they ever connect in a bipartisan way, it's going to be in both of them have an incredible love of self-delusion.
Exactly.
That's how we're going to heal, Scott.
Janine and I, my wife and I have been married for 43 years now. It's coming up on 43 years in next month. We have canceled each other's votes. Ted, I think I've told you this story before, but I'm going to tell you it again.
We both just stay home.
What's that?
You could both just stay home. Fuck it.
Yeah, well, we should. But 1988, Bush versus Dukakis. We're expecting our second child. Janine's water bursts that morning. And so she's she goes through labor like, grabbing my bottom lip and pulling it over my head. You did this to me, you son of a bitch, kind of like labor. She still insisted on stopping by the polling place to cancel my vote. So I'm going to assume a lot of marriages are like this, that one spouse votes one way, the other spouse may vote the other. I'm not sure. I'd be curious to know how often spouses vote in the same way or vote the same ticket. But I don't know. I mean, I think that, yeah. Okay. You know what? I should have shut up and leave it at both sides have this, proclivity towards self-delusion because you couldn't be more right. So speaking of self-delusion, Ted, where can we see all things Rall?
Well, you can see them at rall.com, RALL.com. I think it's still up there. No self-delusion there. The DMZ America, oh my God. You can check out the Final Countdown radio show on Radio Sputnik. Check it out on Rumble. You can stream it either live 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern time, Monday through Friday. You can stream it after the fact. whowhatwhy.org and gocomics.com/Ted Rall, and also Centerclip, which Scott and I are both on, which is an app with little mini podcasts. It's about politics and stuff. Scott, where can we get all things Scott Stantis?
Yeah, I love Centerclip. I just enjoy it. It's just an easy way to some breaking news. In fact, as soon as I'm done with this, I'm going to jump on and have a comment on the Federal Reserve Board. So yeah, centerclip.com, get the app, go to the website. Or go to Newsweek. Where they run us regularly and post our work. You can go to Scott Stantis, go to gocomics.com/ God, we're both having senior moments here. It's gocomics.com/Scott Stantis, one word. Go to gocomics.com/Prickly City. You can check out my political comic strip, and you can go to chicagotribune.com/opinion, see my work I draw for them. Dallas News, the work I draw for the Dallas Morning News, and schmerkonish.com, his newsletter, the guy you've seen on Sirius XM and on CNN television. So there it is. We work hard, don't we, Ted?
We work hard for the money.
Wait, by the way, you write an amazing column, which I love. And where can people see that?
Best place is just to go to rall.com, RALL.com.
Okay. All right. Because it's very much worth reading. And your radio show, I mean, I know I sound like such a sycophant, but you really do touch on topics that no one else is talking about. They're relevant to people in a way.
Listen to it while you still can.
Yeah, before Hillary Clinton, by the way, announced that she wants to prosecute people who are agents of things that she does not agree with.
Of the Russians.
Of the Russians. Now, if you're Kazakhstani or Uzbekistani agent,
If you're
you're
Azeri,
cool.
you are safe for now, but
You are
not
cool.
for long.
You are down with Hillary Clinton, who will not prosecute you. However,
for now.
No, it's such an outrage, Ted. I'm sorry. That's another podcast. We should have a First Amendment.
All right. Yeah, no, we
All right,
can,
man.
for sure. We could go on for hours on that. And who
All right,
would
brother.
want to hear that? Scott, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for listening to us here. See you again next week, unless or sooner if news breaks between now and then. And thanks very much for listening to us and watching also on YouTube. Take care.
Au revoir.
A bientôt.
Adios.